The alarm buzzed at 5 a.m., its sharp sound slicing through the stillness of the small apartment. Amara's hand, trembling with weariness, fumbled to silence it. Her eyes burned with the weight of too many nights cut short. But there was no space for Resna when 2 little lives depended on her. The room was dim, lit only by the faint orange glow of street lamps, slipping through thin curtains. Eli and Elsa, her 7-year-old twins, lay curled together on their small bed across the room. Their breaths rose and fell in perfect rhythm, a fragile reminder of innocence untouched by the world's harsh demands. Amara paused, looking at them with quiet reverence, whispering a prayer under her breath. "Let me make it through today." She moved silently through the kitchen, where cracked tiles told stories of years gone by. She prepared oatmeal with the little she had, her motions practiced and efficient. The steam fogged her weary face, but she forced a small smile when Elsa's sleepy voice called out, "Mama, are you making breakfast?" "Yes, my love," Amara answered softly, masking her exhaustion. "Eat well, so you'll be strong." The twins, though young, had begun to notice the shadows beneath their mother's eyes, and the way her shoulders slumped after long shifts. They tried to help in their own childlike ways, Li folding clothes clumsily, Elsa setting the table with mismatched spoons. Their small acts were like patches on a torn cloth, unable to fix everything but somehow keeping life from unraveling completely. After breakfast, Amara dressed carefully in her plain but neat office attire. Her hands smoothed the same skirt she had worn countless times before. She checked the seams, praying no tear would betray her struggle. With a final kiss to her children's foreheads, she whispered, "Be good today. Mama will be back soon." The commute was a blur of crowded buses and hurried footsteps, but Amara carried herself with quiet determination. She arrived at the towering glass building that felt more like a fortress than a workplace. Here, she was not a mother, not a woman with dreams, and only a secretary. Another cog in the machine. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting cold shadows across polished floors. Her desk sat in a row of others, papers stacked high like silent mountains waiting to topple. Amara adjusted her chair and began sorting files with meticulous care. Each keystroke on the computer, each note taken, was an attempt to prove her worth in a world that seemed ready to discard her. Then there was Mr. Gray. He entered the office with his usual commanding presence, tall, sharp-suited, and expressionless. His eyes scanned the room like a hawk searching for weakness. Conversations died as he passed. Employees straightened their backs, desperate to avoid his attention. Amara kept her head low, heart pounding, praying not to catch his gaze. She knew the stories, how he had dismissed others for small mistakes, how he valued efficiency over humanity. To him, she was replaceable. To her children, she was irreplaceable. And so, with quiet determination masking the storm inside her, Amara began her day. The fragile morning had passed, but the shadow of coming trials loomed closer, whispering that peace would not last for long. The morning moved quickly inside the office. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and printers spat out endless papers. For Amara, every moment was a balancing act, answering calls, filing documents, and keeping her mind sharp while exhaustion tugged at her like invisible chains. Her desk was neatly arranged, each folder stacked with care. But behind her calm surface, her mind swirled with constant worries. Did I leave enough food for the children's lunch? Will the bus fare be enough until payday? These thoughts pulled at her attention, even as she tried to focus. By mid, the mistake happened. It was small at first, an email. She thought she had scheduled to the right client, but in her rush, it had gone to the wrong recipient. Attached was an important contract, sensitive and time-bound. She didn't notice until hours later, when a sharp voice cut through the office silence. "Whose file is this?" Mr. Gray's voice boomed from his office door, cold and commanding. Heads turned, whispers rose, and the air tightened. Amara froze, her breath caught in her throat. The folder he held looked painfully familiar. Her hands trembled as she stood, stepping forward. "It was mine, sir," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. The office fell into a hush. Co-workers avoided her eyes, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. A few pitied her. Most stayed silent, unwilling to be caught in Mr. Gray's croshairs. Mr. Gray's stare was sharp enough to pierce through steel. "Do you realize what this mistake could cost us? Do you understand that precision is the minimum requirement of this job?" Amara lowered her gaze, shame burning through her chest. "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." "Sorry," he repeated, his tone dripping with disdain. I've heard that word before. You've been given chances already. Maybe this office needs someone more reliable. Her stomach dropped. She wanted to plead, to explain that it was exhaustion, not incompetence, that she worked 2 jobs to feed her children, that she barely slept, but the words tangled in her throat, fear choking her silent dot. As Mr. Gray returned to his office, the whispers began. She's done for. He never forgives mistakes. She won't last the week. Amara sat back at her desk, her hands trembling so badly that her pen scratched uneven lines across the page. Guilt pressed heavy on her shoulders. It wasn't just about the mistake, it was about what it meant. Without this job, there would be no rent, no food, no school fees. She imagined Eli and Elsa's faces, their smiles fading into hunger and fear. The thought hollowed her out. The day dragged on painfully. Every tick of the clock a reminder that her time might be running out. Each glance from Mr. Gray felt like judgment, each silence from her coworkers like confirmation of her fate. When the final bell of the workday rang, Amara gathered her things quietly and walked to the bus stop. The world outside bustled with life, but for her, it felt muted, distant, like she was moving through a fog dot at the school gates. The twins ran to her, their laughter cutting through the gloom. Eli wrapped his arms around her waist while Elsa tugged at her hand, eager to share stories of their day. Amara forced a smile, tucking her pain behind her lips. How was work, Mama? Elsa asked, eyes wide with innocence. Amara hesitated, her throat tightening. She couldn't tell them the truth, that her job hung by a thread, that their lives might soon crumble. Instead, she smoothed Elsa's hair and said softly, "It was fine, my love. Let's go home." But as they walked back, the weight of her silence pressed harder. The twins skipped ahead, their small hands swinging together, unaware of the storm gathering behind their mother's tired smile. The misstep had been made, and the shadows were closing in. For Amara, the question was no longer whether she could endure, but whether the world would allow her to keep standing at all. The office building was silent the next morning, but for Amara, the silence carried a dreadful weight. She sat at her desk, typing with trembling fingers, her mind replaying Mr. Gray's sharp words from the day before. Each keystroke felt like it might be her last dot inside his office. Mr. Gray studied the folder again, his expression carved in stone. He pulled the dismissal form from his drawer and began filling in the blanks with precise strokes. To him, it was nothing personal, just business. To Amara, it would mean the collapse of everything she had fought to hold together. The storm had begun to gather. That evening, Amara trudged home, her shoes worn thin from the long walk after the bus broke down. Her body ached, but her spirit bore the heavier burden. She opened the apartment door to find Eli and Elsa waiting at the table, their school books spread out. "Welcome home, Mama," Eli said brightly, running to hug her. Elsa followed with her own gentle smile. Amara clutched them tightly, trying to draw strength from their warmth, but behind her forced smile, fear pressed heavily. She knew she had to keep going for them, always for them. Later that night, as the twins slept soundly, Amara sat by the small window with a cup of lukewarm tea in her hands. Memories surfaced, unbidden. She remembered the day her husband walked out, the slammed door, the silence that followed, the way Eli, then just a toddler, had cried for his father while Elsa clung to her leg. That was the moment she had vowed never to let her children feel abandoned again. She had given up her dreams, studying further, maybe becoming a teacher or a writer. Instead, she worked double shifts, morning to evening, night to dawn. Every coin she earned went to food, rent, and school supplies. Every dream she once held was traded for survival. And now, even that fragile balance was under threat. The following day, her worst fears crept closer to reality. In the break room, she overheard 2 co-workers whispering. Mr. Gray's already preparing her dismissal papers. One said, "It was just one mistake." The other replied softly, "But you know him. Once he decides, it's over." Amara's heart sank. She turned away quickly before they could notice her. The world around her blurred. The chatter of the office felt distant, as though she were sinking underwater. "He's already made up his mind," she thought. Her hands shook as she returned to her desk. She tried to work, tried to pretend nothing was wrong, but every rustle of paper, every step in the hallway made her flinch. The storm was no longer Farit, was at her doorstep. That evening, back at the apartment, Amara moved quietly as she prepared dinner. The twins, sensitive to the shifts in her mood, exchanged glances. They knew something was wrong, even if she didn't say it. When they sat down to eat, their neighbor, Mrs. Cole, stopped by to return a borrowed bowl. She leaned close to Amara and, in a hushed voice, said, "I heard from someone at the office. They're going to let you go." Her words were daggers. Amara forced a polite smile, thanked her, and shut the door quickly. But Eli and Elsa had heard enough. "Mama, what does she mean?" Eli asked, his small voice trembling. Amara froze. She wanted to protect them from the truth, but their eyes wide searching, fearful demanded honesty. She sat down slowly, her hands covering theirs on the table. "It just means," she whispered, "that things are uncertain right now. But don't you worry, Mama will take care of everything." But even as she spoke the words, her voice cracked. Tears threatened to spill, though she blinked them back, not wanting to frighten her children. That night, after Amara had gone to bed, Eli and Elsa whispered under the covers. "We can't let them fire Mama," Elsa said firmly, clutching her brother's hand. Eli nodded, his eyes shining with determination. "We have to do something. She works too hard, she's always tired, but she never gives up on us. We can't let them take her job away." Their young minds, fueled by love and innocence, began to weave plans in the darkness. They didn't know how, but they knew one thing for certain: they would stand by their mother, no matter what. Outside, the night deepened, heavy with silence. Inside, a fragile resolve began to bloom in two little hearts, small yet fierce. The storm was here, but so was their decision. They would not let anyone take their mother's dignity away. The following morning, the air inside the apartment felt heavier than usual. Amara moved through the kitchen quietly, her face pale from another sleepless night. She placed slices of bread on the table, her hands working automatically, while her mind swam with dread. Eli and Elsa watched her closely. They didn't say a word, but their little hearts ached at the sight of her slumped shoulders. Their mother's smile was thinner now, her eyes carrying a sadness she couldn't hide. When she left for work, kissing their foreheads and whispering her usual promise, "I'll be back soon. Be good today," the twins exchanged a look. The moment the door closed, Elsa spoke. "We have to help her," she said firmly, her tiny hands gripping the edge of the table. Eli nodded, his brow furrowed with determination. "But how? We're just kids." Elsa thought for a moment, then her face brightened. "We can be her gift. Like in stories when someone promises to stand for another, we can promise for Mama. If the boss sees how much she means, maybe he won't fire her." The word guarantor was something they had heard once, from a neighbor explaining how someone stood surety for another. To them, it meant loyalty, protection, and love. Eli's eyes lit up. "Yes, we can show him that Mama is the best, that she's our hero. If he knows how hard she works, maybe his heart will change." Excitement mixed with nervousness, they began to plan, their little minds spinning ideas that were as innocent as they were bold. The twins gathered crayons, scraps of paper, and their school notebooks. Elsa drew pictures of their mother, one of her cooking, one of her holding their hands, another of her tucking them into bed. Each picture was messy but full of love. She wrote under one, "Mama is strong for us." Meanwhile, Eli scribbled notes in shaky handwriting. "Mama works all night so we can eat. She never forgets to kiss us goodnight. She is our hero." The children rehearsed what they would say, speaking in whispers under the covers of their shared bed. They stumbled over words, corrected each other, and tried to sound grown up. Elsa practiced standing tall, saying, "We promise Mama is good. She never gives up." Eli added, "If you give her another chance, we promise to be extra good at school, so she won't have to worry so much." Though their voices cracked with childish tones, the determination in their eyes was fierce. Back at work, Amara had no idea of her children's secret mission. She sat at her desk, her mind clouded with fear about the upcoming meeting with Mr. Gray. She rehearsed silent prayers, imagining the worst but clinging to the hope of a miracle. At home, however, two small hearts were plotting that very miracle. The night before the meeting, Eli placed the drawings and notes carefully into his backpack. "We'll take these with us," he whispered to Elsa. "But how will we get there?" she asked, worry flickering across her face. Eli grinned mischievously. "We'll follow Mama. She won't even notice." Elsa's eyes widened, but slowly she nodded. "For Mama, we can do it." That night, as Amara tucked them into bed, she kissed their foreheads, unaware of the secret pact they had made. She lingered by their side for a moment, smoothing Elsa's hair and adjusting Eli's blanket. "Sleep well, my loves," she whispered softly, though her voice carried a tremor of fear. When she left the room, The twins squeezed each other's hands under the covers. Their plan was risky, even scary, but in their young hearts, the choice was clear. They would stand for their mother. They would be her guarantors. And no matter what waited in Mr. Gray's office, they were ready to face it together. The morning of the meeting arrived, heavy with dread. Amara dressed slowly, her hands unsteady as she buttoned her blouse. She checked herself in the mirror twice, smoothing the wrinkles from her skirt. But no amount of adjusting could quiet the storm inside her. Her children watched her from the doorway. Eli's backpack was slung over his shoulders, filled with drawings and notes, hidden like a secret weapon. Elsa clutched his hand tightly, their eyes full of determination. "Be good today," Amara told them, trying to sound steady. Her smile was thin, her eyes tired. She kissed them and left for work, never realizing 2 small pairs of feet would follow her into the unknown. At the towering office building, Amara's stomach churned as she stepped inside. Every click of her heels on the polished floor echoed her fear. The air felt colder than usual, heavy with judgment. Employees avoided her gaze. They already knew what was about to happen. In Mr. Gray's world, mistakes were final sentences. When she reached her desk, the secretary next to her gave a small, pitying glance. Amara pretended not to notice. She straightened her papers, though her hands trembled. Minutes felt like hours, until finally, the call came. "Mrs. Amara," Mr. Gray's voice carried from his office. Inside now, her chest tightened. She rose on unsteady legs and walked toward the door, whispering a silent prayer. Inside, the office was spotless, every detail sharp and controlled. Mr. Gray sat behind his wide mahogany desk, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. A folder lay open in front of him, the dismissal letter. "Sit," he ordered. Amara obeyed, clasping her hands tightly in her lap to keep them from shaking. "I will not waste time," he began, his voice clipped. "Your recent error compromised sensitive information. This is not the first issue. I cannot afford unreliability in this company. I'm terminating your contract effective immediately." The words struck her like stones. Her throat tightened, her chest heavy. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. "Sir, please," she finally managed, her voice trembling. "It was one mistake. I can do better. Please, But just as tears threatened to rise, the door burst open. 2 small figures stumbled in, Eli and Elsa, their faces flushed from running, their eyes wide with bravery. "Stop," Eli cried, his voice shaking but loud. "You can't fire our mama." The room froze. Mr. Gray's brows furrowed in disbelief. "What is this?" he demanded. Amara gasped, her heart lurching. "Eli, Elsa, what are you? How did you?" She rushed to them, her hands fluttering in panic. "You shouldn't be here." But the children stood firm, slipping past her to stand directly in front of Mr. Gray's desk. Elsa clutched Eli's hand, her chin lifted bravely. "We are her guarantors," Elsa declared, her small voice trembling but steady. Amara's knees nearly gave way. She wanted to pull them back, shield them, but they planted themselves firmly, unmovable in their innocence. Mr. Gray's icy eyes narrowed. "Guarantor, what is this nonsense?" Eli fumbled with his backpack, pulling out crumpled drawings and notes. He spread them across the desk, his little hands shaking. "These are for you, so you know who our mama really is." The drawings showed Amara cooking, smiling, holding their hands. Notes scrawled in messy handwriting spelled out truths too deep for children to carry. "Mama works all night so we can eat. She is tired but she never stops. She is our hero." Elsa stepped closer, her eyes filling with tears. "Mama is the best person in the world. She takes care of us all alone. She doesn't sleep because she's always working for us. If you take her job, how will she take care of us?" Amara covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please, please, stop," she whispered, her voice breaking. But the twins ignored her desperate pleas, their courage stronger than her fear. Eli looked straight at Mr. Gray, his small fists clenched. "We promise to be extra good at school, to help Mama more at home. Just, please don't take her job. We'll stand for her. We're her guarantors." The room was silent except for the children's shaky breaths. Even the air seemed to pause. Mr. Gray leaned back slowly in his chair, his hands folded under his chin. His cold mask did not break, but his eyes flickered with something long buried. Amara's tears flowed freely now. She wanted to gather her children and run, to spare them this humiliation, but their words hung in the air, impossible to ignore. For the first time in years, the walls of Mr. Gray's office trembled not from anger, but from the weight of innocence breaking through. he stared at the twins, their little bodies standing like shields in front of their mother, and though his face remained stern, inside, cracks began to form in the armor he had built around his heart. The confrontation had begun. The outcome remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: two small voices had shaken the unshakable. The silence in Mr. Gray's office stretched unbearably. Eli and Elsa stood rigid in front of the desk, their drawings and notes scattered like fragile evidence on polished wood. Amara remained frozen behind them, torn between pulling her children away and collapsing in gratitude for their courage. Mr. Gray's face was carved from stone. For a long moment, he said nothing, his sharp eyes darting between the trembling twins and the weeping mother. His fingers tapped once on the desk, then stopped. Finally, his voice broke the stillness. You think, standing here, saying these childish words, changes the reality of business? Eli swallowed hard but did not step back. It's not just words, it's the truth. The boy's voice wavered, but his conviction pressed forward. Elsa squeezed his hand tighter, her chin lifting. We promised to stand for Mama. We mean it. Something in Mr. Gray's chest shifted, an unwelcome stirring. His lips pressed into a line. He had built his reputation on ruthlessness, on never bending to personal pleas. But now, two tiny figures stood before him, their courage slicing through the cold machinery of his world. Amara finally found her voice. Sir, please, they're just children. They don't understand. But Mr. Gray raised a hand, silencing her. His eyes lingered on the crayon-drawn pictures scattered on his desk, the crooked lines, the bold colors, expressions of love, unfiltered by fear. One sketch showed Amara with a wide smile, holding both children's hands as though she were their entire world. His jaw tightened. Unbidden, a memory stirred. Years ago, before the gray suit and the fortress of power, he had been a young man, sitting beside his own mother, in a small kitchen. She had worked 2 jobs, her hands raw, her eyes weary. He had promised her foolishly, naively, that one day he would make life easier for her, that she would never have to worry again. But she had died before he succeeded, and in her absence, he had buried that boy, walling off compassion with ambition. Now, looking at Eli and Elsa, he felt the echo of that buried vow. It gnawed at him, unsettling, dangerous. He cleared his throat, his voice gruffer than usual. Children, do you understand what your mother did? Mistakes in this company cost money, trust, security. It is not a place for pity. Elsa blinked rapidly, her tears spilling. But Mama never gives up. Everyone makes mistakes, even us. She's always there to fix them. Why can't you give her one more chance? Eli added, if you fire her, you're not just firing Mama, you're hurting us too. The words lodged in Mr. Gray's chest like thorns. He opened his mouth, ready to respond with cold logic, but the words faltered. Behind them, Amara sobbed softly, whispering apologies. I never meant for them to come here. Please, I'll take them out. No, Mr. Gray said sharply, his voice low but commanding. They stay. Amara froze, startled. For the first time, Mr. Gray leaned forward, studying the children intently. Their eyes were wide with fear but burned with fierce loyalty. There was no strategy in their presence, no manipulation, just raw, unpolished truth. His hand hovered over one of Eli's notes. In messy handwriting, it read, Mama is our hero. She never forgets to kiss us goodnight. His chest tightened again. The word hero stirred something fragile within him. He exhaled slowly. You remind me, he said at last, almost to himself, of a promise I once made, a promise I could not keep. The children tilted their heads, puzzled. Amara's eyes widened. Was this the first glimpse of softness she had ever seen in this man? Mr. Gray's mask slipped for just a second. His gaze drifted past them, far away, lost in a place none of them could reach. Then, abruptly, he straightened, pulling the mask back on. This does not erase the mistake, he said firmly. But, he hesitated, the word heavy, reluctant. I will consider what you have said. Relief washed over Amara in a tidal wave. She fell to her knees, clutching the twins, her tears soaking their hair. Thank you, she whispered again and again, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking to her children, to God, or to the man behind the desk. Mr. Gray cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the sight. Enough, he said brusquely. This meeting is over. Take your children home. Amara gathered her things quickly, but as she ushered Eli and Elsa toward the door, Mr. Gray's voice stopped her. Mrs. Amara, she turned, her heart pounding. His eyes locked on hers, softer now, though, still stern. Do not make me regret this pause. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a promise, but it was not the end she had feared. As they left the office, Amara clutched her twins tightly, whispering broken words of gratitude. The children, though exhausted, smiled through their tears. Their plan had not failed. Had cracked something in the unbreakable Mr. Gray, and in that crack, hope glimmered. The air outside Mr. Gray's office felt different, lighter, yet still heavy with unspoken words. Amara walked quickly, her arms wrapped tightly around Eli and Elsa, as though they might vanish if she let go. The twins clung to her, their small faces pressed against her blouse, unaware of the professional stares that followed them down the hall. Her legs shook beneath her, but she held her head high. Somehow, against all odds, she still had her job. The reprieve was not victory, it was mercy. Fragile and conditional, but it was enough. When they reached the cool night air outside the building, Amara stopped. She crouched down, holding the children close, her tears finally breaking free. "What you did," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't have words. You were so brave." "Too brave." Eli blinked up at her. "We promised we'd stand with you." Elsa added softly. "We didn't want them to take you away from us." Their words pierced her heart. Amara's chest ached with pride and guilt all at once. She brushed her thumbs against their cheeks, forcing a weak smile. "You saved me tonight, but you shouldn't have had to. That was my burden, not yours." The children nodded solemnly, but their eyes glowed with triumph. In their innocent world, they had fought and won. The walk home was quieter than usual. The city lights blurred around them, and Amara's thoughts swirled: gratitude, exhaustion, fear. Mr. Gray's voice still echoed in her ears. "Do not make me regret this pause." He had not forgiven. He had not forgotten. Yet, for the first time, she sensed he had seen her not just as a secretary, but as a mother, a woman clawing her way through storms. When they reached their modest apartment, Amara pushed the door open and let the twins race inside. Their shoes thudded against the floor, their laughter returning in short bursts as they recounted their big adventure. Amara leaned against the doorframe, her bag slipping from her shoulder. Relief washed over her like a tide. She was still employed. The rent would still be paid. Food would still find its way to their table. And yet, beneath the relief lay something else, a vow forming quietly in her heart. She would work harder, yes, but she would also fight harder to shield Eli and Elsa from carrying burdens too heavy for their small shoulders. Later that night, as she tucked them into bed, Amara kissed their foreheads gently. "Thank you, my little guardians," she whispered. "But from now on, I promise I'll be the one to protect you." The twins smiled sleepily, their tiny hands clasped together. Within minutes, they drifted into dreams, safe and warm. Amara lingered at their bedside, tears shimmering in her eyes. Tonight, they had changed everything. Their innocence had forced open a door no pleading adult could move, and somewhere in a tall, cold office, she knew Mr. Gray was still awake, wrestling with the cracks they had carved into his armor. For the first time in a long time, Amara allowed herself to believe maybe tomorrow would hold more than survival. Maybe tomorrow could hold hope. Morning sunlight spilled gently through the thin curtains, painting golden stripes across the small apartment. The world outside was already rushing, but inside, Amara lingered in a rare moment of peace. She stood by the doorway of her children's room, watching Eli and Elsa sleep soundly, their faces calm and innocent. Last night's storm had left her drained, yet the sight of them filled her with renewed strength. They had carried her when she felt she could no longer stand. She bent down, brushing a kiss across their foreheads, her voice a whisper only the walls could hear. "You saved me, my loves, and I will never let you bear my battles again." She moved into the kitchen, the hum of the kettle filling the silence. For the first time in months, she did not feel completely alone. A fragile mercy had been given, but even more powerful was the reminder that love, pure, unyielding love, was her greatest armor. At the towering office across town, Mr. Gray sat in his corner room, staring at a photograph he had long kept hidden in his desk drawer. It was old, faded, but still clear. A woman with kind eyes, holding a boy who had once dreamed of taking care of her. His fingers traced the worn edges, memories pressed against the walls he had built inside himself. The twins' voices echoed in his mind. "It means we'll stand with her, no matter what." He set the photograph back down, his reflection in the glass window staring back at him. For the first time in years, the face looking back seemed less certain, less unshakable. A crack had formed, and through it, something human flickered. That evening, Amara returned home later than usual, carrying groceries she had managed to buy with what little remained after rent. Eli and Elsa ran to her, arms wide, their laughter filling the tiny space with warmth. She pulled them into her embrace, holding them so tightly they squealed. "We'll be okay," she whispered, half to them, half to herself. "We'll be okay." And in that embrace, in their smiles, tomorrow didn't feel so heavy anymore. Because love, especially the love of children, had softened even the hardest of hearts and restored dignity where despair once lived. The dawn of a new beginning had quietly arrived.